Exactly at midnight on my 70th birthday in a shabby apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles, the old phone my husband had left behind suddenly began to vibrate violently. The screen lit up brightly without me touching it. His voice, the voice of a man who had been gone for more than 3 months. It came through clear and unmistakable. "Happy birthday, my love. You made it to 70. Now, the real game begins." I dropped the phone in shock, but his voice continued, revealing a secret that would turn my entire life upside down. How could I, a woman who had sacrificed 45 years as a wife, who had been thrown out of her own home by her children, who had been mocked for inheriting nothing but an old phone, become the richest person in the family without anyone knowing? This story is not about money. It is about betrayal. It is about pain. And it is about how a woman finds herself again when everything has been taken away. Come with me. Let us begin from the day my world truly collapsed. That night when the clock struck exactly midnight, I, Lauren Smith, turned 70 years old. I lay on a thin mattress in a shabby apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Dim yellow streetlights slipped through torn curtains, casting uneven cracks across the walls. The room was so small that I could reach from the bed to the kitchen with just one stretch of my arm. The damp smell mixed with the low hum of the refrigerator had become my only companions for many months. I expected nothing from this birthday. No calls, no messages, not a single wish for my children. Only a heavy silence and a loneliness I had learned to live with. The old smartphone, the only thing my husband Rick had left me in his will, lay quietly on an overturned wooden crate that served as my bedside table. It had been powered off for a long time. Its black screen felt like a cruel reminder of being forgotten. Then at the exact moment the clock hand touched 12, the phone began to vibrate. Not a normal vibration. It shook hard, violently, as if someone were trying to wake me from the dead. The screen lit up suddenly, without me pressing any button. The passcode unlocked on its own, and it started to ring. I jolted upright. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst out of my chest. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone. From the speaker came a voice I thought I had lost forever. Rick's voice, deep, warm, painfully familiar, as if he were sitting right beside me in this dark room. "Happy birthday, my love," his voice said, gentle but clear. "You finally made it to 70. Now, the real game begins." I froze. The phone slipped from my hand and fell onto the worn carpet. But Rick's voice continued without interruption, like a whisper from the past, cutting straight into the present. Every word he spoke felt like a blade twisting deep inside my heart, opening secrets I had never known during nearly half a century of marriage. Secrets about our life together, about the true inheritance he had left behind, and about why he chose this cruel way to set me free. I sat there in the darkness. Tears rolled down my cheeks without me noticing. My hand pressed against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. How was this possible? How could a man who had been gone for more than 3 months speak to me right now? And why? Why did he call this the real game? When his voice slowly faded and finally fell silent, the phone screen turned black again. Only then did I realize I was trembling. Not from the cold, but from a feeling that was both terrifying and filled with hope rising inside me. I stared at the phone lying on the floor, as if it were a doorway to another world. A world I had never known I was allowed to enter. How did I end up like this? How could a woman who once had everything, a 45-year marriage, a family, a luxurious home in Beverly Hills, end up here in this shabby apartment with nothing but an old phone and the voice of her dead husband? To answer that, I have to go back in time. Back to 3 months ago. The day my world truly collapsed, the day Rick left forever, and the day I began to realize that everything I had believed in might have been nothing more than a fragile illusion. 3 months ago, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, my world collapsed without any warning. Rick, the man I had loved for 45 years, was sitting in his private office in downtown Los Angeles. Architectural drawings were spread across his walnut desk beside a stack of unsigned contracts. He was 68 years old. Yet he worked with the intensity of a man of 30, 18 hours a day, no rest, no compromise. I used to joke that one day he would die from overworking. He would just laugh and say, "If I have to die, I want to die doing what I love most." It turned out that joke became the truth. His secretary, a young woman named Emily, found him collapsed over his desk at around 3 in the afternoon. She screamed and called 911, but when the paramedics arrived, Rick's heart had already stopped for 15 minutes. 15 long minutes, and I knew nothing about it. 15 minutes in which he left this world alone, in that cold room, without my hand holding his, without my voice whispering that everything would be all right. I still ask myself again and again, if I had been there, if I had just stopped by his office like I sometimes did, would anything have been different? Would he have left this world in more peace? That regret never let me go. It ate away at me every night, every hour, even while I was still living in our grand mansion in Beverly Hills, the place that had once been our home. I sat alone in the vast living room, looking at our wedding photos on the wall, looking at the leather armchair where Rick used to sit and read every evening. And I realized something. No matter how many bedrooms the house had, no matter how many marble bathrooms, no matter how many luxury cars filled the garage, I was still suffocating in loneliness. When I looked back on 45 years of marriage, I began to wonder what I had given up. I had once been a talented architect. I graduated from UCLA with honors. I dreamed of designing buildings that would change the skyline of Los Angeles. My early projects had been praised. I had been invited to join international competitions. But then Ethan was born. Then Victoria. Then Nathan. Rick was busy building his real estate empire from nothing. He was an immigrant who had arrived in America with only $200 in his pocket, and I chose to stay home. I chose to become a full-time wife, a full-time mother. I told myself it was the right thing to do. That family came first. I felt proud watching my children grow up with everything they needed, proud watching Rick succeed, proud seeing the name Harrington Properties rise on magnificent buildings. But now, sitting in that empty mansion, I realized I had lost myself. I was no longer Lauren, the passionate architect I once was. I was only Rick's wife, the mother of Ethan, Victoria, and Nathan. And when Rick was gone, I suddenly became nothing at all. The most painful feeling was being left behind, not only by Rick's death, but by the very people I had sacrificed my entire life for. My children, the ones I had held in my arms, the ones I had stayed awake all night for when they were sick, the ones whose achievements I proudly celebrated now seemed unable to see me at all. They looked at me as if I were unnecessary. As if I were a small, unimportant detail in the picture of success they were rushing to redraw in their own way. I remember clearly the evening after the funeral. I sat alone on the leather sofa in the living room. The crystal chandelier cast a cold light across the room. Maria, the housekeeper who had worked for our family for more than 20 years, quietly brought me a cup of hot tea. She did not say much. She simply placed her hand on my shoulder for a moment, then whispered in a warm, gentle voice, "Mrs. Lauren, Mr. Rick always said you were the strongest woman he had ever known. Do not let the pain defeat you." I only nodded. I did not dare to speak, afraid that my tears would spill out. But the pain was not only loss, it was regret. It was a question with no answer. Why had I let everything pass like that? Why had I not held on to a part of myself? And more than anything, why did Rick, the man I loved more than my own life, choose to leave me with nothing but a locked old phone and no comfort at all? I did not know then that this very phone would become the key to a truth beyond anything I had ever imagined. A truth that would force me to face my entire life again, and force me to choose, to continue living like a shadow, or to finally stand up and walk on my own feet. But at that time, I could only sit there in that vast and cold mansion, holding my loneliness and my unanswered questions, waiting for the day when everything would be revealed. And I had no idea that day was much closer than I ever thought. Rick's funeral was held at an upscale funeral home in Beverly Hills. Everything there carried a cold sense of luxury, from the deep red velvet curtains to the sparkling crystal chandeliers. The air felt heavy, mixed with the scent of lilies and artificial incense, making it hard to breathe from the moment I stepped inside. I chose to sit in the second row, not out of modesty, but because no one wanted to sit beside me anymore. The seat next to me was empty, like an invisible space I had grown used to in recent years. I wore a simple black dress, the same one I had once worn on important occasions with Rick. Now it only made me feel smaller than ever. Maria Gonzalez, the housekeeper who had been with our family for more than 2 decades, sat quietly behind me. She did not say much. She gently placed her hand on my shoulder for a moment, then whispered in a warm voice with a soft Mexican accent, "Mrs. Lauren, Mr. Rick was always proud of you. You are not alone." I only nodded. I did not dare to answer, afraid my voice would break. Maria was the only person in that house who still looked at me with genuine care, not pity, not calculation. In front of me, the Brazilian mahogany coffin remained open, revealing Rick's face. Peaceful in a strange way, as if he were only sleeping. But I knew he was not. He was gone, and I was not there to say goodbye. Then I looked at my children. Ethan, my eldest son, the one who always called himself the heir, sat in the front row. His phone pressed to his ear, his voice low but urgent. "Yes, schedule the meeting with Bennett for tomorrow morning. We need to move fast on the probate filing." He did not even wait for the funeral staff to close the coffin. My heart tightened. Only hours after his father's death, my son was already talking about dividing the estate. Beside him was Victoria. She wore an expensive black silk dress, surely worth more than $5,000. She was scrolling through documents on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly as if she were reviewing a shopping list. Her eyes were dry. Not once did she look toward her father's body. I wondered, was she truly grieving or simply calculating her share? Nathan, my youngest, the child I once held through sleepless nights, when he had nightmares, sat between them. He lowered his head, covering his face as if he were crying. But I knew my son too well. Those were not tears. He was only a shadow of Ethan and Victoria. He had never had his own voice. And now he was the same, nodding along with whatever they decided. I sat there alone, looking at the 3 children I had spent my entire life raising, and I realized a cruel truth. After 45 years of marriage, not one of them sat beside me. No comforting hand, no arm around my shoulders, no whisper saying, "Mom, I am here." Only silence. And the quiet murmurs about money, about shares, about the future of the Harrington Empire. White wreaths filled the room, white roses, lilies, gardenias, sent by business partners who knew Rick only through contracts and cocktail parties. Rick hated flowers. He once told me flowers are the most wasteful thing. They look beautiful for 3 days, then they die. Money should be used to build houses, not to buy death. And yet now hundreds of bouquets surrounded his coffin like a false farewell from people who had never truly known him. No one spoke about the man who came to America with only $200 in his pocket, the man who slept in a truck to save rent, the man who stayed awake all night drawing designs when the company had just begun. No one mentioned that man. The man who built Harrington Properties from nothing into a real estate empire stretching across California, Nevada, and Arizona. They only spoke about generous Rick, the successful man, empty words floating in the cold air. When the service ended, Ethan was the first to stand. He did not walk to the coffin for a final goodbye. He simply nodded to the staff and walked out, his phone still pressed to his ear. Victoria and Nathan followed without a single glance back at me. I remained there alone, surrounded by fading flowers and the thick artificial scent. Maria came to me and gently helped me stand. She said nothing. She only held my hand tightly, and in that moment I realized something more painful than loss itself. 45 years of marriage, 45 years of sacrifice, and in the end I still had no one. But I did not know then that this loneliness was about to push me into a journey I had never imagined. A journey that would begin with a locked old phone and would lead me to the truth Rick had hidden for so many years. A truth that would change everything. And as the funeral came to an end, I walked out of the funeral home with a heavy heart, not knowing that the real storm had only just begun. 2 days after the funeral, I received a summons from the law office. Not a private meeting, but the official reading of the will. I walked into a tall glass building in the very center of Los Angeles's financial district. Sunlight cut through the glass walls like blades, making everything feel colder and more distant than ever. Mr. Harold Bennett's office was on the 22nd floor. The space was large, with a conference table so polished that I could see my own reflection. Old, tired, small. Ethan sat at the head of the table as if he were already the true owner. Victoria sat on his right, her fingers still moving across her phone. Nathan sat on the left, tapping his fingers on the wood, his face anxious but forcing an awkward smile. I was placed at the far end of the table, As far away as possible, like an unnecessary detail no one wanted to look at. Mr. Bennett, the family lawyer, opened his leather briefcase with slow, formal movements. The sound of rustling paper filled the suffocating silence. He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began to read in a steady, cold voice. The kind of voice lawyers use to turn even the greatest pain into lifeless words. I, Richard Harrington, being of sound mind, declare this to be my final will. Each word fell like a drop of acid. He read the division of assets. Ethan would receive 40% of Harrington properties, along with all ongoing projects in California, Nevada, and Arizona. Ethan smiled. A predator's smile. So satisfied it made me feel sick. Victoria would receive 30% along with the Beverly Hills mansion and everything inside it. She only nodded slightly as if confirming an ordinary bank transaction. Nathan would receive the remaining 20% along with the collection of vintage cars and the vacation properties in Cabo. He let out a quiet breath as if relieved of a burden. My 3 children, the ones I had raised for 35 years, divided 90% of a $50 million empire. And me, I sat there gripping the edge of the table, cold sweat running. Bennett turned to the next page, deliberately avoiding my eyes. To my wife, Lauren Smith, I leave my personal smartphone kept in the safe in my private office with clear instructions that it must not be tampered with or forced open in any way. The room fell silent for 1 second. Then laughter broke out. Ethan laughed first, a dry, cruel sound echoing against the glass walls. 45 years of marriage, and she gets a flip phone. Victoria covered her mouth, but her shoulders shook as she tried to hold back her laughter. Even Nathan let out an awkward laugh, trying to hide it with a cough. They laughed at me. They laughed at the very mother who had sacrificed her entire youth so they could have everything they now held in their hands. Mr. Bennett remained neutral. His voice did not change. The will was drafted 3 weeks before Mr. Harrington's passing with 3 independent witnesses. There are no errors. Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms, his voice full of contempt. How pathetic. 45 years together, and in the end, all she gets is an old phone that probably does not even turn on. Something inside me shattered. Not loudly, but quietly, like a thin crack forming on an old crystal glass. Once it breaks, it never heals again. My voice came out unfamiliar even to myself. So, that is all. Mr. Bennett nodded. There is an additional clause. Under California Probate Code, Section 13500, Mrs. Lauren may remain in the mansion for 30 days. After that, she must leave. 30 days. 45 years of life reduced to 30 days. Victoria was already calculating. We can shorten that. Mom does not need such a big place. I will find her a smaller apartment. Something modest. The word modest hit me like a slap. I wanted to laugh, but all I felt was bitterness in my throat. Mr. Bennett handed me a small metal key, cold in my hand. The phone is in the safe in his private office. You may retrieve it at any time. I took it. It was so light it almost had no weight. But in that moment it felt as if my entire life, 45 years of sacrifice, 45 years of love, 45 years of turning myself into a shadow, was resting in the palm of my wrinkled hand. My children left the office already arguing about percentages, expansion plans, and how they would restructure the company. Not one of them looked back at me. I remained there alone, staring at the tiny key, and for the first time in my life, I truly understood what it felt like to be completely erased. But deep inside that humiliation, a small flame began to flicker. I did not know it then. That key would not only open an old phone, it would open a truth Rick had hidden for years. A truth that would turn all their laughter today into the greatest regret of their lives. I tightened my grip on the key, stood up, and walked out of the law office with a broken heart, yet still holding on to one last piece of strength. The real storm had only just begun. That afternoon, right after leaving the law office, I drove my old car, the only thing I had kept from the mansion garage, to Rick's private office in downtown Los Angeles. I could not wait another minute. The small key Mr. Bennett had given me lay cold in my palm like one final challenge from the husband who was gone. The office was exactly the same as the day he died. The door was unlocked. Emily, his secretary, must have left it that way, knowing I would come. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. At once, the scent of leather, faint tobacco, and cold coffee filled the air. Everything was frozen in time. Architectural drawings spread across the walnut desk. A half-finished cup of coffee still beside the computer mouse. A Mont Blanc pen lying at an angle as if Rick had just stepped away for a moment. I stood still at the doorway, feeling as if he could walk in at any second, straighten his tie, and ask, "What are you doing here, Lauren?" disturbing me again, but he did not come in. Only silence remained, heavy and a sharp pain rising in my chest. I walked to the large abstract painting behind his desk, orange and gray tones. I had always hated it, but Rick insisted on keeping it because, as he said, it was a valuable investment. I pushed the heavy frame aside. The safe appeared built into the wall. My hands trembled as I inserted the key. A soft click echoed. Too light for the weight of what I was about to face. Inside there was only one thing, an old smartphone. It looked like something from the time of an early model iPhone. Small screen, physical buttons, completely powered off. I picked it up carefully as if it were something fragile, or a timed bomb. The plastic surface felt cold in my hand, heavier than I expected. I sat down in Rick's large leather chair, the chair where he had spent hours signing contracts, moving millions of dollars. It still carried the faint scent of his Creed Aventus cologne mixed with old paper and ambition. I turned the phone on. The screen flickered. The logo appeared. Then the wallpaper. Our wedding photo. I was 25. Wearing an ivory dress, flowers in my hair, smiling as if the whole world belonged to me. Rick stood beside me, young eyes full of dreams. We looked so happy, so innocent, as if nothing could ever break us apart. Then the lock screen appeared. Enter passcode. 6 empty circles. I started with the obvious. Our anniversary. 0823. Wrong. The screen vibrated softly. Rejected. Rick's birthday. 15456. Wrong. Ethan's birthday. Wrong. Victoria's. Wrong. Nathan's. Wrong again and again. After 10 failed attempts, a red message appeared. Too many incorrect attempts. Try again in 30 minutes. I let out a slow breath and leaned back in the chair. The waiting time began to increase. 30 minutes, then 60, then 120. The security system was designed to stop hackers. Now it was torturing a desperate woman. I tried again when the time was over. The day we first met. Wrong. The number of our first apartment in Los Angeles. Wrong. The last 6 digits of Rick's social security number. Wrong. Each failure felt like a stab into my heart. The waiting time grew longer. 4 hours, 8 hours, 16 hours. I sat there for hours holding the phone tightly against my chest. And then, for the first time since Rick died, I truly cried. Not the quiet tears at the funeral, not the silent pain at the reading of the will, but deep, uncontrollable sobs, hot tears soaked into the cream-colored blouse I was wearing. I cried for 45 years that had passed. I cried for the talented architect I once was, the woman who dreamed of designing skyscrapers but gave it all up to be a wife and a mother. I cried for the family dinners where my children barely looked at me. I cried because Rick died alone in this very room, his heart breaking under pressure, and I was not there to hold his hand. But more than anything, I cried out of anger. Anger at Rick for leaving this behind. A cruel puzzle. A public humiliation. Why did he not leave money, a house, a letter of explanation? Why this locked phone, as if even in death he still wanted to control me? I held the phone like the last piece of him. The only thing left in the ruins of my life. His voice echoed in my mind. The real game begins now. I did not know what that game was, but I knew one thing. I would not give up. Not because I was strong, but because I had nothing left to lose. Outside, the sun was setting over downtown Los Angeles. Tall buildings glowing with neon lights. I sat in my husband's dark office, tears still falling. And for the first time in many years, I felt a small spark burning quietly inside my chest. A spark of resilience I thought had long been extinguished. I did not know then that these failures would lead me to the moment that would change everything. At that time, I could only hold the phone tightly and whisper into the darkness, "Rick, what do you want me to find? Why did you do this to me?" There was no answer, only silence. But I would keep searching. because I had no other choice. 30 days passed faster than I expected. It was the final time I was allowed to stay in the Beverly Hills mansion, the home that had been ours for more than 4 decades. Under California law, a surviving spouse may remain for a reasonable period to arrange things. But Victoria did not want to wait. She showed up on day 29, bringing 2 movers in gray uniforms, and began supervising everything as if I were a thief in my own house. I stood at the living room doorway watching her inspect every cardboard box I had packed myself. Old clothes, a few architecture books, family photos that no one wanted to keep. She opened each box, turned over every item, even checked my handbag as if afraid I might be hiding a silver vase or a pair of diamond earrings. "It is just procedure, Mom," she said, her voice cold. "Do not be upset. I am only following the lawyer's advice." I was not upset. I was humiliated. So humiliated that I no longer had the strength to resist. Everything I owned after 45 years of life fit into 8 cardboard boxes. They filled the back of an old van. No large moving truck. No staff. No proper farewell. Only Maria stood at the kitchen door, her eyes red, quietly handing me a handkerchief and whispering, "Mrs. Lauren, you will be all right. You are stronger than you think." I held her tightly for a moment, then walked out of the mansion for the last time without looking back. The new apartment was in the outskirts of Los Angeles, an old neighborhood where ambulance sirens echoed through the night and the smell of fast food filled the hallways. 200 square feet, about 18 square meters. Just enough for a single bed, a small stove with 2 burners, and a cramped bathroom where the toilet and the shower almost touched. The beige walls were stained with watermarks. The ceiling was dotted with black patches of mold. The refrigerator made a buzzing sound every 20 minutes as if it were about to break down. I sat on the thin mattress that came with the rental, looking at the stack of boxes in the middle of the room. For the first time, I truly understood. This was the bottom. I began to live in survival mode. 1 meal a day. Usually discounted bread from the supermarket at the end of the street. Sometimes a piece of cheese when there was a promotion. My blood pressure medicine, small white pills, cost $80 a month. I decided to reduce the dosage, cutting the pills in half to make them last longer. The consequences came quickly. Dizziness, irregular heartbeat, rapid weight loss. My clothes hung loosely on my body. My cheekbones became sharp. The face in the bathroom mirror was no longer mine, only a tired, aging shadow. Then one afternoon, as I dragged myself back from the supermarket with a bag of bread and discounted expired milk, I met Sophie Chen. She lived in the apartment across from mine. An Asian woman in her 60s, her hair tied neatly, always wearing oversized sweaters, even in the Los Angeles heat. She saw me nearly stumble on the stairs and rushed over to help me. "Are you all right? You look very tired," she said in a warm voice with a gentle California accent. I tried to refuse, but she did not give me the chance. She invited me into her small apartment, clean, tidy, with a faint scent of green tea. She made me a cup of hot tea and sat beside me. She did not ask many questions. She simply listened as I spoke in fragments about my husband's death, my children, this new apartment. She did not judge. She only nodded, then shared her own story. "I lost my husband to cancer too. My daughter lives in San Francisco now. Busy with her work, she rarely calls. There are nights when I feel invisible, but I learned something. Sometimes strangers understand us the most." From that day on, Sophie became a small light in my dark days. She often brought me leftover food, fried rice, vegetable soup, sometimes homemade buns. "I cook too much," she would say. "Please help me eat it so it does not go to waste." She also taught me how to find discounts at the supermarket, how to use apps to get coupons. Sometimes she just sat with me on the hallway steps, talking about small things, the weather, an old movie. Raising children in the past, Sophie could not change my situation. But she made me feel that I still existed, that I was still a person. But even with Sophie, life was still a long stretch of hardship. I lost a dangerous amount of weight. Jeans that once fit now slipped down my hips. Every morning I looked at the stained ceiling and asked myself, how long will I live like this? Rick's old phone still lay on the wooden crate beside my bed, the screen black, still locked. I did not dare try again. The waiting time had reached dozens of hours. But every night I held it close and whispered into the darkness. "Rick, why did you leave this for me? What do you want me to find?" I did not know that these days at the bottom were preparing me for a turning point that would force me to face everything I once believed in, and perhaps finally find myself again. But at that time, I could only sit in that shabby apartment holding the phone like my last piece of hope and wait, even though I did not know what I was waiting for. In the days after moving into the shabby apartment, I tried to hold on to my last piece of hope by clinging to Rick's phone. But reality did not give me a chance to breathe. My children, the people I once believed were my own flesh and blood, began to show their contempt openly and more cruelly than ever. One evening, as I sat on the edge of the bed holding the lifeless phone in my hands, the door suddenly burst open without a knock. Ethan walked in, still wearing his perfectly tailored suit. The scent of expensive cologne filled the cramped space. He looked around the room, the stained walls, the unopened boxes, the humming refrigerator, then looked at me with a mix of pity and disgust. "Pathetic, Mom," he said, his voice sharp as a blade. "Just an old phone. Dad probably left it here years ago and forgot about it. And now you sit here like it is some kind of treasure." I looked up at my son, the child I once held in my arms, the one I stayed awake all night for when he had a fever, the one I proudly praised for his achievements. Now he stood there tall, successful, and looked at me like I was a failure. I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell him this phone was everything his father left me, that it might hold something more important than he could imagine. But the words caught in my throat. I stayed silent. My hands tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. Ethan shrugged as if my silence confirmed his judgment. "We need to talk about your situation. The 30 days are up. Victoria found you an apartment. 1 bedroom, small kitchenette, enough for 1 person. You are not expecting visitors anyway. Your friends stopped calling years ago because you were too busy being the perfect wife." He paused, then delivered the final blow. "Maybe you should ask yourself why Dad left you nothing but this thing." He turned and walked out, leaving me with a dull ache in my chest. The door slammed. His footsteps faded. I sat there, tears falling silently, feeling as if my heart was being crushed. A few days later, I received a message from Victoria, short, cold, attached with a photo of the Beverly Hills mansion under renovation. She had hired Claire Donovan, a well-known interior designer in Los Angeles, to redesign the entire space. In the photo, Claire pointed at the living room wall, smiling brightly with color boards and 3-dimensional plans beside her. Victoria's caption read, "$500,000 on renovations. It is an investment. The old place needed a fresh start. $500,000. To refresh the house I had lived in, cleaned, and turned into a home for 45 years. My hands trembled as I looked at the photo. Did she ever think about the mother who stayed up all night sewing her dresses, the mother who drove for hours to take her to ballet lessons, or was everything now just an old place that needed a fresh start? Nathan was simpler. He sent one short message. "Mom, I need space. This is complicated for me too. Please understand. No questions, no concern, not even a simple wish for my health." He had a vacation villa in Cabo, an infinity pool, cocktails every evening. I had 200 square feet of despair. Space. The word echoed in my mind like a sentence. I tried to reach them. With no money to pay for mobile service, I used a public phone on the street corner, an old machine buttons clicking loudly, the smell of cigarette smoke clinging to my hands. I called Ethan first. His secretary answered in a cold, professional tone. "Mr. Harrington is in an important meeting." I said I am his mother. "It is urgent. He will call you back when he has time." He never did. I called Victoria. The phone rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. "Hi, this is Victoria Harrington. Leave a message after the tone." Her voice carried no warmth. I left a message. Then another. Then another. Only silence. Nathan was the only one who replied, with the same message. "Mom, I need space." The same 3 words. I stood by the public phone, gripping the receiver, tears running down my face. Cars rushed past on the streets of Los Angeles. People laughed. Life went on. And I stood there like a forgotten ghost in the middle of it all. Then it reached its breaking point. Rick's phone, the only thing that still connected me to him, suddenly locked completely after one final attempt. I entered my own birth year, 66, almost 67. Wrong. A red message appeared. Device will be locked for 30 days. The screen went black, dead. No response to any button. I shook it desperately, tried to turn it on again. Useless. At the same time, the landlord knocked on the door. He stood in the hallway, his voice harsh. "Mrs. Smith, you owe 2 months of rent. I do not care what your children promised. Pay up or get out." 2 weeks. That is it. The door slammed. His words hung in the air like a death sentence. 30 days. The same time the phone would remain locked. $1,800. Money I did not have. The stress built until my body began to collapse. My heart raced. Severe dizziness. My hands and feet turned cold. I lay on the thin mattress, holding my stomach from hunger, staring at the stained ceiling. For the first time, I thought about giving up. I whispered into the darkness. "Rick, I cannot go on. I have no strength left. I am about to fall apart." But deep inside that despair, a small thought still flickered. If this phone was the last thing Rick left me, then it had to mean something. It had to hold something. And even if there was only the faintest thread of hope, I chose to hold on to it, because I had nothing else left to hold on to. I did not know that these darkest days were leading me to a moment that would change everything. A moment that would turn all the pain, all the contempt, all the laughter into the force that would make me stand again. But at that time, I could only lie there in that shabby apartment holding the lifeless phone tightly and wait, even though I did not know what I was waiting for, or whether I still had the strength to keep waiting. Exactly 30 days later, 30 long days of hunger, loneliness, and sleepless nights, Rick's phone was finally unlocked. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling so badly that I had to use both hands to hold the device. My heart pounded as if it would burst out of my chest. I no longer tried to think logically. No more dates, no more house numbers, no more birthdays. Only instinct. Something deep in my memory like a whisper from the past. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered. The logo appeared. Then our wedding photo. We were young, happy, unaware that 45 years later I would be sitting here in this shabby apartment with wrinkled hands and a broken heart. The lock screen appeared. Enter passcode. 6 empty circles. I did not think. My fingers moved on their own as if guided from within. 0, 8, 2, 3, 2, 5. The screen vibrated softly. The circles turned green. Unlocked. I froze. My hands went slack. The phone almost slipped from my grasp. After months of failure, after nights of silent tears, after believing I had already lost, it opened. The passcode was our wedding date, August 23, combined with my age at that time, 25. So obvious, so simple, and yet so deeply hidden. Rick always said I was the most beautiful woman in the world on our wedding day. He kept that day sacred, and I, in my desperation, had never thought to combine it with my age. The home screen appeared. No normal apps, no social media, no games, only 3 icons on a black background. A folder named For Lauren, a calendar icon with one date marked in red, and a voice recording app. I touched the first folder. It opened to a list of 15 files, each one large. My trembling finger opened the first file. It was a scanned property deed, fully registered under the name Lauren Smith. Address: a 4-story commercial building in downtown San Diego. Estimated value: $3,200,000. It had been under my name for 8 years. Rick's signature was clear, notarized, legally dated. Not a joke, not a mistake, real. I opened the second file, a 24-unit apartment complex in Portland, Oregon, under my name, value $2,800,000. The third file, an industrial warehouse in Las Vegas, $1,400,000. I kept opening them, like someone possessed. One by one, buildings, land, investments across the West Coast, all under my name, perfect legal documents. Total value, $42 million. $42 million. I dropped the phone onto the mattress and covered my face with both hands. The world spun. The walls of the apartment felt like they were closing in, the air thick, hard to breathe. Impossible. Too much, too sudden, but the documents were there. Clear scans, real signatures, real seals. Rick had built a parallel empire in my name, hidden for 8 years. While my children fought over $50 million from the main company, the woman they mocked and cast out, owned $42 million in real estate that no one knew about. I exited the folder and touched the calendar icon. It opened to a single date marked in red. October 18th, my 70th birthday, 3 weeks away. The note beneath it read, "Everything will be revealed on this date. Wait, my love, wait. 3 weeks." Rick wanted me to wait 3 more weeks. I touched the third icon, the voice recording app. Only one recording. 43 minutes, recorded 2 weeks before Rick died. My finger hovered over the play button. Part of me wanted to press it immediately to hear his voice again. Another part was afraid of what it might contain. Tears began to fall before I could stop them. Not just sadness, a storm of emotions, anger, relief, confusion, hope, all tangled together. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears with the back of my hand. Then I pressed play. A soft static sound. Then Rick's voice, clear, warm, as if he were sitting right beside me in this shabby apartment. "Hello, Lauren. If you are listening to this, it means I managed to keep the plan secret until the end. It means I died without telling you anything. And it means you have been through the hell I designed specifically for you." His voice was calm, steady, the same tone he used when explaining a contract or making a major decision. "I know you are furious with me right now. You have every right to be. I left you with a locked phone while our children got everything visible. I made you look like the fool, the forgotten one, the worthless one. And worse, I let them humiliate you. I let them throw you out of your own home. I let you go hungry and cold in some terrible place." He paused. I could hear his heavy breathing. "I am sorry, my love. I am sorry for every second of pain I caused you. But I needed it to happen exactly like this. I needed our children to show who they truly are when they believe they have everything. I needed the world to see them without their masks. And more importantly, I needed you to see yourself without me." I covered my mouth. Tears fell silently. "For 45 years, you were my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. But somewhere along the way, you forgot who you were before all of that. You forgot the brilliant architect, the woman with dreams bigger than the sky. You became my shadow, and I allowed it because it was easier for me, more convenient." His voice broke slightly. "This phone is not just an inheritance, Lauren. It is your freedom. The documents you found are real. The money is yours. It always was. I built that parallel empire in your name because I knew one day you would need to stand on your own. I knew our children would become greedy. I saw it and refused to face it. That was my greatest failure as a father." The recording continued. Each word struck my heart. "In 3 weeks, you will turn 70. On that day, this phone will unlock the rest of the plan. But for now, I want you to know one thing. You are not alone. You never were. And what comes next will change everything." Static. The recording ended. I sat in the darkness, the phone still in my hand, tears falling without stopping. I did not sleep that night. I sat there holding the phone as if I were holding Rick's soul, listening to the recording again and again until I memorized every word, every pause, every breath. His voice filled the empty apartment. It made it less cold, less lonely. But at the same time, it filled my mind with endless questions. What else is there? What will happen on my 70th birthday? Why did he make me wait so long? He had already given me $42 million, a fortune I never knew existed. What could be beyond that? When the first light of morning slipped through the dirty window, touching the cracks on the wall, I made a decision. I would not tell my children. Not yet. Rick had designed this as a test, a calculated revelation. If he chose my 70th birthday to reveal everything, then I would wait. I wanted to see how far their greed would go. I wanted to see how deep they would push me before the truth finally came to light. After listening to Rick's recording, I sat frozen in the darkness of the apartment, the phone still resting in my palm like something sacred. His voice echoed in my mind. "You are not alone. You never were. Those words felt like a beam of light cutting through the thick darkness that had surrounded me for months. I was no longer alone, at least not completely. Rick had left me one final connection, a single phone number in the contacts list with no name, only a California area code. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. My hands trembled as I pressed the call button. The phone rang 3 times. 4, 5. I thought no one would answer. Then an older man's voice came through. Warm, calm. "Hello, Lauren. I have been waiting for your call." I froze. He knew my name. He had been waiting for me, but I had no idea who he was. Who is this? I finally managed to ask, my voice unsteady with emotion. "My name is Marcus Delgado. I was Rick's best friend for over 40 years. I am also his personal attorney, separate from Harold Bennett, who handled the family corporate affairs." His voice was gentle and patient, as if he fully understood the storm inside me. "Rick asked me to wait for your call. He said it would come exactly when you needed it most." I could not hold it in anymore. Tears fell again. I do not understand any of this. Why did Rick not tell me anything? Why did he make me go through all of this? Marcus let out a quiet sigh filled with regret. "I know, and I am deeply sorry for what you have been through. Rick told me the entire plan. At first I thought he was crazy. It felt too cruel to let you suffer like this. But he insisted. He said it was the only way for you to wake up. Wake up from what I asked, my voice shaking. From 45 years of being invisible, of living as someone else's shadow, of forgetting who you were before you became his wife and their mother." He paused briefly, then continued. "You found the property documents? Yes. I still cannot believe they are real. They are completely real and fully legal. Every property has been generating income for years. The money has been accumulating in a dedicated account under your name. Right now, there is about $6.3 million in cash available. That is separate from the value of the properties. $6.3 million. I had to sit down before my legs gave out. I was about to be evicted because I could not pay $1,800 in rent. And yet I had $6.3 million waiting somewhere for me. Tears streamed down my face again. But this time they were not from pain. They came from overwhelming relief. "Why did Rick not tell me? Why make me suffer like this?" I whispered. "Because he knew you better than anyone, Lauren. He knew that if he told you while he was alive, you would have given it all away. To your children, to the family, to everyone except yourself. That is who you have always been. You always put yourself last." He was right, completely right. If Rick had told me earlier, I would have insisted on sharing everything. I would have believed I did not deserve it. I had lived that way for 45 years. Always last, always invisible. "What should I do now?" I asked quietly. "For now, nothing." Rick was very clear about that. "He wants you to wait until your 70th birthday. Everything will be revealed then. There is more than what you have seen. More I cannot say." I promised him I would not interfere. "But I can help with your immediate situation. I understand you are about to be evicted tomorrow." "Yes," I whispered. "That will not happen. I am transferring $10,000 to you tonight. Use it to pay your rent and take care of yourself until your birthday. This is your money, not charity." I could not find the words, only tears and a strange warmth spreading through my chest, a feeling I had almost forgotten, the feeling of being protected, of being cared for. "Do not say anything," Marcus said gently. "Just hold on a little longer. Only 17 days. Rick was right about many things, especially about you. You are stronger than you think." He paused, then added, "One more thing. Your children know nothing about this. Harold Bennett does not know either. Rick separated everything carefully so no one could interfere. When your birthday comes, everyone will be surprised, especially your children." I could hear the quiet smile in his voice. "Take care, Lauren. And call me if you need anything. This number will always be here for you." The call ended. I sat there staring at the dark screen, and for the first time in months I felt real hope. Not vague hope, not empty hope, but something real, something I could hold on to. That night a bank notification appeared. Deposit received, $10,000. I stared at the number until my vision blurred with tears. Not sadness, relief, hope, and something else, strength. The next morning I went straight to the landlord's office. He looked up surprised. "Mrs. Smith, I am about to call the sheriff if you do not." I placed a thick envelope on his desk. Inside was $2,000 in cash. "This covers the 2 months I owe and next month in advance." He opened it, counted twice, looked at me with suspicion. "Where did you get this? That is not your concern," I said calmly. "We are done here." He nodded slowly, still staring. I turned and walked out, my head held high. For the first time in months, I did not have to beg. I did not have to shrink myself. I had money. I had power. Maybe not much, but enough to remind me that I was no longer a victim. Back in the apartment, I stood in front of the small bathroom mirror. I looked at my face, thin, wrinkled, exhausted. But my eyes were different. There was a spark in them now, a quiet strength, the strength Rick believed I still had. I whispered to myself, 17 more days, Lauren, just 17 more days. I did not know what those days would bring, but for the first time in a long time, I believed I could endure. And maybe, just maybe, I would survive this storm and step into a new life. A life Rick had prepared for me, long before I ever realized it. In the days after my call with Marcus Delgado, I began to change, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. I no longer ate just one meal a day. With $10,000 in my account, money that was truly mine, as Marcus had emphasized, I started buying proper food. Fresh chicken, vegetables, rice, even some fruit. I cooked simple meals on the small 2-burner stove, and the warm smell of food filled the apartment, making it feel a little less cold. I bought a few new clothes. Nothing expensive, just clean sweaters and jeans that actually fit. Enough so I no longer felt like a ghost inside my own body. Every morning I looked into the mirror and saw a difference. My eyes were less dull, my cheeks less hollow. I was taking care of myself. For the first time in many years, and it made me feel a little stronger. But I kept everything a complete secret. I did not tell Sophie Chen, even though she was the only one who still cared about me. I did not tell Maria, even when she called to check on me. And I certainly did not tell my children. Rick had designed everything to unfold on my 70th birthday, 17 days away, and I chose to respect that. I wanted to see what they would do when they believed I was still just a poor, useless old woman with nothing but an old phone. Then the pressure began to build. One afternoon, as I walked back from the grocery store carrying a bag of vegetables, I noticed a gray sedan parked across the street from my apartment. Not for the first time. Before I thought it was a coincidence. But this time, as I climbed the stairs, the car was still there. Engine off. Someone inside. The windows dark. My heart began to pound. I turned back. A man wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses was staring directly at me. I quickened my pace, gripping the grocery bag tightly, feeling as if every step I took was being watched. That evening, Marcus called again. His voice was more serious than usual. "Lauren, listen carefully. Rick had a friend, Ray Thompson, a retired detective who used to handle private cases for him. Ray just contacted me. Ethan hired someone to follow you. They are suspicious. They think you might have something they do not know about. Ray says the man is outside your building right now." I sank onto the bed, clutching my chest. Ethan hired someone to follow his own mother, yes. He is paranoid. Probably because you suddenly paid rent in cash and stopped begging. They do not know about the properties yet, but they sense something is off. Ray is watching the situation for us. He is on our side. But Lauren, be careful. Do not confront anyone. Just act normal. We are only 15 days away from your birthday. The call ended. I stood up and pulled the curtain aside. The gray car was still there, silent, watching. I felt suffocated. Not just from fear, but from the pain of realizing that my own son had sent someone to spy on me. I sat down on the floor, my back against the wall. Tears slipped quietly down my face. "Ethan, how could you do this to me?" I decided to contact my children one last time, not to beg, but to see if there was anything human left in them. I called Ethan from the public phone on the street corner, the same phone I once used in desperation. His secretary answered. Mr. Harrington is unavailable. I left a message. Ethan, this is your mother. I just want to know how you are. No reply. I called Victoria. She answered after 3 rings, her voice impatient. Mom, I am in the middle of a meeting with Claire. The renovations are going great. We are doing a full modern redesign. $500,000, but worth it. So, what do you need? Not a single question about me. I said softly, I just wanted to hear your voice. She hung up. No, goodbye. Nathan replied the same way he always did. A short message. Mom, I need space. Please stop calling. That was all. No explanation. No hesitation. I stood there at the public phone, gripping the receiver, watching cars rush past on the streets of Los Angeles. Tears fell again. But this time it was not just pain. It was something deeper. The sorrow of a mother realizing that the children she gave everything to now saw her as a burden, as someone they needed space from. When I returned to the apartment, the gray car was still there. I closed the curtains, turned off the lights, sat in the darkness holding Rick's phone close. I whispered, Rick, I am scared. I am afraid they will find out before I am ready. I am afraid I am not strong enough to face that birthday. But deep beneath the fear, another thought began to grow. If they were watching me, if they were suspicious, then they had already sensed the change. They could feel that I was no longer weak, no longer desperate. And that, even just a little, made me feel more powerful than ever before. 14 days left. I would wait. I would keep the secret. And when my 70th birthday came, I would stand in front of them, not as a victim, but as a woman who had finally found herself again. I did not know what that day would bring, but I knew one thing. I would not let fear defeat me anymore, because Rick believed in me. And for the first time in 45 years, I was beginning to believe in myself. My 70th birthday arrived on a cool October morning in Los Angeles. I woke at 5 a.m, unable to sleep from anticipation and anxiety. I stood under the shower, the water shifting between warm and cold. I put on a dark blue suit that I had bought with my own money. It was not luxurious, but it was clean, proper, and for the first time in many years, it fit both my body and my soul. When I looked into the mirror, I no longer recognized the broken woman from 3 months ago. There was light in my eyes now, not the light of revenge, but the light of someone ready to face the truth. I arrived at Marcus Delgado's office at 8:40, 10 minutes early. The building was older than Harold Bennett's office. Exposed brick, wooden window frames, a warm atmosphere like a family library. An elderly secretary greeted me with a sincere smile. Mrs. Smith, Mr. Delgado is waiting for you. She led me down a wooden hallway that creaked softly beneath our steps into Marcus's office. It was filled with old books, a dark mahogany desk, and worn leather chairs. Marcus stood up as I entered. He was around 70, completely white hair, kind eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. Lauren, he said, gently taking my hand. Happy birthday. Thank you, I replied, my voice trembling. Sit down. The others will be here soon. But before they arrive, I want to give you something. He handed me a thick envelope sealed with red wax, a detail that felt unmistakably like Rick. A letter. Rick wrote it for you to read today. Take your time. He left me alone. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were several pages handwritten in Rick's sharp, familiar script, a handwriting I would recognize anywhere. My dearest Lauren, if you are reading this, it means you survived. I knew you would. You are stronger than you ever believed. These past months have been hell. I made it that way. Not because I hated you, but because I loved you too much to let you live the rest of your life as my shadow. You had to break completely so you could rebuild yourself. Our children became monsters. That is my fault. I gave them too much. I taught them that money was power, but not compassion, humility, or hard work. When I saw what they had become, I knew I had to do something drastic. The empire they inherited is real, but it was designed to teach them a lesson. The debts, the pressure, those were intentional. I wanted them to understand that money without wisdom is a curse. But you, my love, deserve something different. The parallel empire in your name is yours. 42 million in properties, 6.3 million in cash. But there is more. For 15 years, I invested in technology, international real estate, and venture capital through a shell corporation. That corporation is worth about $68 million. It is entirely in your name. In total, you own more than $116 million. You are one of the wealthiest women in California, and no one knows it. Today, Marcus will reveal everything. They will see your power. They will see that I never forgot you. But this is the most important part. This money is not for you to become like them. It is for you to live, to travel, to design again, to reclaim the dreams you gave up. The decision about our children is yours. Help them or do not. I will not judge you. I only want you to know every decision I made was because I believed in you. Happy 70th birthday, my love. Yours always, Rick. Tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of release, of understanding, of forgiveness. Rick had not just left me money. He had given me a chance to find myself again. The door opened. Marcus stepped in. They have arrived. Are you ready? I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, stood up straight. I am ready. We walked into the meeting room. Ethan, Victoria, Nathan, and Harold Bennett. They were already seated. They looked at me with surprise, not because I came, but because I was different, no longer broken, no longer desperate. I wore my dark blue suit, my hair neatly tied. I walked with a confidence they had never seen. I sat across from them. Marcus took his seat at the head of the table. Good morning. Today is Lauren Smith's 70th birthday. As instructed by Richard Harrington, the full truth about his estate will now be revealed. Ethan leaned forward. Is there more money, something to help with the company's debts? Marcus looked at him calmly. Oh, yes. There is much more money, but not for you. Then it began. He placed the documents on the table, slowly, deliberately. 15 years ago, Richard built a second empire, one that no one here knew about. He slid the first document forward. $42 million in real estate, all in Lauren Smith's name. Silence, total silence. Ethan spoke first. That is impossible. He chose not to include you, Marcus said coldly. Victoria picked up a document, her hands shaking, her face drained of color. This cannot be legal. It is fully legal, Marcus replied. Nathan sat still, head down. He understood before the others did. Marcus continued. There is more. A shell corporation, investments in technology, international markets, venture capital, worth approximately $68 million. Another set of documents, all in Lauren Smith's name. Ethan shot to his feet. This is insane, Marcus looked him in the eye. She is the woman who gave up everything for you, the woman you threw out, the woman you let suffer. Each word hit like a slap. Harold Bennett finally spoke. What is the total value? $116 million, Marcus said. And unlike your assets, hers has no debt. Silence again, this time crushing. Victoria whispered, Mom, we did not know. You would have treated me differently, I said calmly. Silence, because it was true. I stood up. For the first time, they looked at me with something else. Not pity, not contempt, but fear, respect. I gave you everything for 45 years, I said. And when your father died, you threw me away. Ethan tried to speak. I stopped him with a glance. I see you clearly now. I took a breath. And now I must decide. They tensed. You are drowning in debt, and I have more than enough to save you. Hope flashed in their eyes. But I will not. The blow landed, not from hatred, but because your father was right. You must learn this lesson the hard way. I walked toward the door, then stopped. If one day you learn humility and come back to me as children who love their mother, not as beggars, then maybe we can speak again. I walked out. Behind me, I heard sobs, shouts, collapse, but I did not turn back. For the first time in 70 years, I was walking toward my own future. Marcus caught up with me in the hallway. He smiled. Rick would be proud. I know, I said softly. And for the first time, I truly felt it. 3 months after my 70th birthday, I stood in front of a small but bright building in downtown Los Angeles. It was not a towering skyscraper, not a luxurious mansion. It was a two-story space with large glass windows and a simple sign, Lauren Harrington Designs. I had used a small portion of the money Rick left me to lease this place. Not to show off, but to start over from the beginning. I hired 3 young architects. A Mexican woman named Sophia with extraordinary hand-drawing talent. An Indian man named Arjun who specialized in sustainable design. And an African-American designer named Jamal who could turn the wildest ideas into reality. I paid them fairly without hesitation because I understood the value of being respected and being given a chance. Every morning we sat around a large wooden table on the first floor, warm coffee in our hands. We sketched designs. We debated spacelight and the meaning behind each structure. For the first time in more than 4 decades, I was doing what I loved most. Designing, creating, building things that could outlast a lifetime. I was no longer Lauren Smith, the sacrificing wife, the forgotten mother. I was Lauren Harrington. An architect who had returned to her passion with her own name and a story no one could take away. As for my children, they went bankrupt. Harrington Properties, the empire they once fought over, collapsed under the weight of debts Rick had deliberately designed as a lesson. Ethan now worked as a regular real estate agent at a small firm. He drove himself to meet clients. He wrote his own contracts. He handled his own daily expenses. Victoria sold the Beverly Hills mansion, the one she had spent $500,000 to renovate, and moved into a modest apartment in the valley. Nathan went back to university to finish the degree he had abandoned long ago. I heard all of this from Marcus and Maria, not from my children. They did not call. They did not text. Not a single apology. Not a single request for help. Maria still visited me often. She brought homemade flan or a pot of chicken soup and sat quietly in a corner of the studio, listening as I talked about my new projects. "Mrs. Lauren, you look 10 years younger," she would say, her eyes shining. Sophie Chen, the neighbor who once shared discounted meals with me, had become a close friend. We often met at a nearby cafe, talking about life, family, and the small things that made ordinary days meaningful. Sophie once said, "You know, sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself again." I nodded. Because I understood. I was at peace. No more regret. No more guilt. I woke up each morning with anticipation instead of fear. I ate 3 proper meals a day. I slept well. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had survived hell and chosen to rise again. Rick's old phone now rested on my desk in the studio. It was no longer an object of pain. It was something sacred. Every time I passed by, I paused, touched it gently, and whispered, "Thank you, Rick. Thank you for believing in me when I did not believe in myself. For giving me wings when I thought I only deserved chains. For reminding me that it is never too late to start over." I did not know whether my children would ever come back. Perhaps one day when they learn humility, honest work, and compassion. When they come to me not as beggars for money, but as children who truly want to make amends and rebuild what was lost. Perhaps then we will talk again. Perhaps. But whether that happens or not, I am fine. Because for the first time in my life, I am not waiting for someone to save me. I saved myself. Outside the studio window, Los Angeles shimmered in the afternoon light. Tall buildings, endless traffic, countless possibilities waiting ahead. And I, Lauren Harrington, was finally ready to live them. My story does not end here. It is only just beginning, and I will live it my way.